Pasito tum tum, pasito tum tum, pasito tum tum, pasito tum tum, pasito tum tum.
Ah! Did you miss me? In case you forgot, this is Chef Willie. Welcome to a classic modern reviews. You know, since Endgame recently came out, it has felt more like a comic book celebration. From movies to toys, from comics to t-shirts. And you know what? I love comic book movies. I loved them since the day there were at least 4 or 5 that were actually pretty decent. Now we have a bunch of those to choose from that I've decided I'm gonna share with you my top 20 absolute favorite superhero movies based from comic books. This will contain Marvel and DC, from the past to the modern, from the least popular to the most popular. And word, these are not the top 20, these are my top 20. That means you're not gonna see some of your favorites in this list, and it's only based on opinion. So let's get into the list. These are my top 20 absolute best comic book movies of all time. Spider-Man 2. Over the years, it has been made fun of for its corny moments, awkward acting, and over-the-top silliness. And for some, this might even be considered as an outdated film. But out of all the Spider-Man movies, this one has the most personal, most psychological struggles of the character. It focuses on the pressures of being a hero, how it gets in the way of having a normal life, to the point of losing friendships, loved ones, and the trust of family members. To its credit, the humor still holds on, even to the point of being hilarious. It's got some of the most entertaining extras that I have ever seen. The villain is visually sympathetic, and while the action can look fake once in a while, it's got some of the best fights in a comic book movie. The cliffhangers are great, it's entertaining, and above all, the dilemmas are great. Batman, the Tim Burton version. There's been plenty of adaptations to this character, but no one is more energetic and more fast-paced than the 1989 version. I know some may not consider this the best Batman movie for focusing so much on the villain than the hero, and there are a lot of times that it doesn't make sense, but that's how good it can be. It can be bombastically entertaining that you don't think about its flaws. Plus, this came out when Superman was running out of steam. If anything, this showed that superheroes could still be dark, serious, and good in any time, any period. What else can I say? It's got great cast, great music, and action that can pump you any day, or in this case, any night. Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Some might favor the original a lot more for how it manages to embrace its weirdness with humor. I favor the sequel for how colorful and creative its worlds are. If anything, I'm a sucker for color. But also it's got great character study, with each individual being placed in a dysfunctional relationship. We've already seen superhero families been done before, but this one deals with dysfunctional dilemmas of family that can get very emotional. It includes the struggles of being a parental figure, adoptive figure, dilemmas between son and father, sister and sister, egos colliding with each other. It may not be the most story-driven, but more character-driven. And if anything, I love how dysfunctionally colorful this strange family really is. Wonder Woman. Okay, let's put our misogynistic and feminist agendas aside and look at it as a movie. This hero has some of its most inspirational moments, like when she goes out during war to save others. That was pretty amazing. Though to be clear, she's not the first strong female lead ever, but she is the first comic book female to be successfully represented from its poorly past representations. The fact that it was directed by a woman might have helped to understand the character better. It all goes down to playing to Gal Gadot's strengths while hiding her weaknesses. She's made likable and charming, but not sexually exploitive. She can be naive, but can be active and passionate for others. In addition, it takes heavy subject matters about war, good and evil from a deist and atheist perspective, man's natural inclination for destruction. The ending could have been better, but it still leaves you thinking about those deep discussions they mentioned before. If this Wonder Woman managed to inspire not just women, but men as well, then it might have done something good. Deadpool. Considered as an apology to the fans for its embarrassing debut, this Deadpool managed to bring its fateful fourth wall breaking comedy and the most violent, bloody rated R version of all ratings. Now, that was something unheard of, but this just proved that comic books don't need to be PG or kid friendly to be profitable. As long as they're good and entertaining, everyone else will see it. I love how devoted Ryan Reynolds is to the character. He's so vulgar, so disgusting, and so self-aware that he's as fictional as in the comics. Although I admit that the more I see it, the less hysterical it gets. And it can be tough for comedy to hold up years later. Maybe the dirty vulgar parts may not age as well, but other things, like the romance, the X-Men interaction, its self-references, will be as enjoyable as before. This Deadpool is so entertaining that you can't help but to feel satisfied.
That came out wrong. Or did it?
Ironman. The film that started the whole 10-year saga of crossovers and sequels. This is a fun Tony Stark. All thanks to Robert Downey Jr. for making this character that barely people even knew to a household A-list superhero. Starting out as an egocentric, womanizing celebrity millionaire that goes on a journey of humbleness and reflection to redeem his irresponsible misusage of his money, like unknowingly weaponizing terrorists. As an origin story, it's got some good character development. While I admit I prefer other origin stories, I can't disregard the impact this one made. Without the success of Iron Man, we probably wouldn't have this epic universe. And it speaks loud volumes for how much comic book movies, and even Robert's personal demons have come along all the way for great achievements. Iron Man, the hero that's not afraid for the world to know it, and that makes him pretty cool. Superman. How can you not mention Christopher Reeves on this list? The guy is pretty much the embodiment of the character in presence and in attitude. Now yes, it might be old and might not hold up in such terms as the villain, a few effects, some cheesy moments, the earth spinning backwards, but it carries so much star power and talent behind the scenes, like Marlon Brando, Gene Hackman, the screenplay writer for Godfather, that it changed the concept that these stories are just only for kids, back when it was only seen just for kids. They could also be for adults and deal with heavy subjects about loss, sacrifice, the usage of power. It can be fun, it can be whimsical, and it can also be heartbreaking. If anything, this Superman movie owes everything to the future coming superhero movies of later. The actors are iconic, the hero is iconic, the music by John Williams is iconic, and it made people believe that heroes could actually fly. X-Men First Class. 2011 is when comic book movies started to trend for some other upcoming movies, and for a while First Class seemed to be different from its last X-Men encounters. It doesn't have any of the well-known X-Men from the past, it's based solely on the first young X-Men during the 60s. As a prequel, it's one of the better ones. It might fall into the trap of adding things that were not in the original, like Charles and Mystique being roommates. But what makes this work is McAvoy's and Fasenberg's interaction with each other. These guys are the Martin Luther and Malcolm X of comic books. You can believe this is how a young Professor X and Magneto would have been like. It's a tragic tale how they can't remain friends due to their opposite views about humans, segregation, their place in the world, which results in becoming the destined rivals we know they would be. If First Class didn't need any of the well-known stars from the past, then this definitely is a first-class film. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. What makes this into my list is not just its fun references as a comic book and a movie, but it does something fresh and new with the character. There's a new Spider-Man named Miles Morales that meets up with a bunch of Spider-Mans from different dimensions. If I would have seen this as a kid, I would have loved it even more. The variation of Spider-Man's and how differently animated it is. This was the same year that Black Panther was nominated for Best Picture. It wouldn't win, but Spider-Man would win Best Animation. Marvel got a taste of gold with a cartoon that was made by a studio that did this before! Out of these Spider-Man movies, this is the most creative and character-driven. It's colorful, Morales is likable, it makes some ballsy moves. Whether you think this is the best Spider-Man movie or not, there is no doubt this new web-slinger will be sticking around for a while. X-Men: Days of Future Past. If I had to choose which is my favorite X-Men movie with the team in it, it would definitely be this one. This has the highest stakes from all of the X-Men, and it makes something new with it in its own world. Half of the mutants are dead, heroes and villains work with each other in this dystopian future, there is time travel, there is crossover between old and young cast from First Class, the roles are changed with Logan being a guy to a young broken Xavier, even though he's unfit to lead, and it all works perfectly because it creates such an emotional ride of loss, hopelessness, humor, regret from the past mistakes. Some of the moments that get me are Magneto's speech in the end, the final battle, and Xavier facing his younger self. It also swaps who the main focus is. Instead of Logan, it's now Mystique. As a time travel, it's easy to follow. Though it's pretty funny now how this was meant to reset the franchise, only to get worse in the end. But I digress. It's got great acting, a perfect balance of dark moments and humor. 2014 was a great year for comic book movies. But this one made me realize that we were in the golden age of superhero movies. Hey, bear with me, cause we're up to the top 10. That means they might be pretty good. Sin City. Yes, I know, this is not a superhero movie, but it can count as a comic book based from its graphic novel by legend writer Frank Miller. As a live adaptation, it looks incredible with its black and white dark shadows and minimal use of color. The film is an anthology of 3 stories that include lust, murder, deceit, and revenge in noir style. Hey, I finally said it! I've gone on before with Sin City comparing it to another classic noir film, which you can find in my channel. What I love about this is how we get into the psyche of the 3 main leads, Rourke, Owen, Bruce Willis, as they narrate their point of view. From them, we learn how full of crime and corruption the city is, and no matter how hard they try to fight for those who are defenseless, in a noir world, the corrupt get the last laugh, while the innocent pay the price. It's hauntingly visual, it's provocative, it's psychological, and I love every second of it. Captain America Civil War. What's better than heroes fighting against villains? Well, heroes beating the hell out of each other sounds more fitting. At that time, the Russo brothers had not proven yet how they would manage to jam so many actors to a cohesive story. And to our surprise, they managed to pull it off. In some ways, it feels like a story told in 3 separate ways. In one hand, it's about the Avengers breaking up. The other is Cap protecting his brainwashed friend Winter Soldier. Another is a villain causing the heroes to fight one another, which I hate those plot devices, I hate them so much. And as well debuting new heroes like Black Panther and Spider-Man, and somehow it's still a cohesive story. In some points it doesn't always work, but what works is the motivation of the new heroes, the dilemmas and debates among the Avengers, especially between Cap and Iron Man. Not to forget the amazing fight in the airport with them, it's purely comic book gold. It exists to see our favorite heroes brawl with each other, and if you're seeking for a good rumble, this is the best place to look at. Batman: Mask of the Phantasm. This came out the same year as Joel Schumacher's version, but what surprised many was how the animated version was much more adult than the adult version itself. In the middle of a crime where a killer hunts down elder mobs, including the Joker, Bruce re-encounters a past lover where we learn he almost had a normal life with her. But tragedy falls again, leading him back to his original plan of crime fighting. It's considered not just the best animated superhero film, but one of the best Batman movies because it encompasses everything that Batman is as a tragic figure. For Bruce, it's the ultimate sin to have a normal life. He feels like he's doing a disservice to the memory of his parents if he moves on. It gets into the psyche of the character that we've never seen before. No matter how much he craves it, he will never get that happy life he needs and is only condemned to live a full life of vengeance. The mystery killer doesn't take away from the main story, as it clearly connects to all the subplots. It's voiced greatly, it's animated greatly, and it's one of the darkest Batmans that you'll ever see. Captain America: Winter Soldier. Here's a fun story. I did not watch this on the theater. After seeing its last two mediocre predecessors, I was not looking forward to Winter Soldier. Even the trailer did not impress me. I still thought this was gonna suck. To my surprise, I later find out this was not only just fine, it was unbelievably good. Boy, do I regret missing it! This could have been just another Marvel filler, but thanks to the Russo brothers, they put everything to make Captain America as interesting, and even Black Widow. I place this better than Civil War because it stays much focused on a few things rather than throwing a whole bunch of stuff. It's about conspiracies, reveals, the lack of trust in a divisive era, Captain America's place in a new America. Are his old ideals still worth something, or are they just old ideals? In a lot of ways, this almost felt like an ending to something. But as you know, this would just be the beginning of something bigger. B for Vendetta. A vigilante known as B takes matters into his own hands to inspire a revolution against a dictatorship that controls and censors their European way of lifestyle. This is what George Orwell's dystopian 1984 book would have looked like if it had an anti-hero in it. It's less focused on the action and more on how dictatorships are born, how do they behave, and how do they abuse their power. B doesn't work in the same level of vigilante as Batman. He's more like the Punisher that will take violent measures to change the country, but he can still be a gentleman and kind of a dork. He doesn't rely on his own fighting skills, but creates historical events that can inspire the people to rise up against their oppressive leaders. In a way, this made an impact to our pop culture, giving us the face of anarchy and how trolling hackers look like today. I assume the reason you don't hear much from it is because this came out post 9/11 and early London bombing on 2005. So to label this so-called terrorist as a hero by blowing up a building was very taboo. Whether you agree with his methods or not, he will always be remembered on the 5th of November.
Remember the 5th of November.
Watchmen. Before Zack Snyder became public enemy in my list, Watchmen is a fun dissection of what it is to be a superhero in the most dark, non-kid friendly way as possible. Are they inspiring, or are they people dressed up in ridiculous costumes? Do they actually make a big difference, or are they old-fashioned icons? Inside their world, they can stop simple things like bank robberies, but they can't stop universal issues such as poverty, wars, corruption. So are they really useful if they can't help on big issues? It paints the picture that if you really want to make a change, you're not gonna do it by being a famous celebrity. You have to enter into politics, make laws that benefit other people. Heck, if anybody got that message early, was this guy. Now initially it didn't do well on its release. Whatever issue it might have been, whether if it was too sloppy, self-indulgent, plagiarized the graphic novel, it does so in such grand spectacle that I can't help but to love it. It might have come out way ahead of its time when heroes were not as popular yet, but now it has found its audience to be rewatchable. Logan. The most saddening farewell to any comic book character, that being Wolverine and Professor X, who have been so devoted to it for almost 20 years. As Logan gets older and weaker, he now has to protect a new, younger, faster mutant with the same powers as him, in the most glorious rated R you could possibly imagine. Logan has a place on this list not just for its tear-jerking goodbyes, but it dissects the comic book genre as a whole when comparing it to another old popular genre as westerns. Just like those faded away, comic book movies might soon fade away as pop culture changes. Logan is not a hero, he's an old gunslinger wanting to prove that he still got it, just like comic book movies still have much more to offer. And they don't seem to stop anytime soon, so as long as they offer something new, we will still invest into these stories for a while longer. Avengers Endgame. I'm sure some were hoping to see this on my number one spot. While it is the most hyped up comic book movie of all time, who knows how it's gonna hold up later on. Regardless of that, it's gonna go down as a classic for this genre. It is something that we've never seen before. So much planning in such a long term has never led to such a big finale that has been so worth it, so satisfying, and so heartbreaking, helping define this decade of movies. It's not the most action-packed of the Avengers, but it is the most arc-driven, emotionally driven, and most depressingly driven. For what the heroes have lost, for what they will lose, and how hard they work to reverse their tragic defeat. Whether the following Marvel movies or Phase 4 start sucking, we can always look back at a moment that had a perfect build-up to a perfect ending. The Dark Knight. Speaking of classics, for a long time, this has been the role model for comic book movies. It sets itself in reality, it makes sense in its own world, the characters aren't treated like comic books, but more like people that could exist in our reality. Part of what made it into success was how the villain was so twisted. Heath Ledger as the Joker has gotta be one of the most iconic villains ever put on screen. What also made it into a fascinating story was its philosophical debate between the hero and the villain about moral standards and ethical choices. The villain doesn't win in the end, but neither does the hero. It's got everything that a superhero movie should have. Great drama, great action, memorable villain, a hero you want to root for. It changed how we perceive comic book movies that is not just a fan favorite, but is as well included as a great film. It would be too simple if I had to place it in the number one spot, but it's a favorite nonetheless. Now before I get into my number one pick, here are a few honorable mentions. Black Panther! No, this is not the first black superhero movie that goes to Blade. Still, you get nominated in the Oscars, so good for you. Batman Begins, overshadowed by its sequel, but hey, we wouldn't have a Dark Knight if this wasn't that good. The Avengers, what officially started the golden age of superheroes, and we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this. The Mask of Zorro, not a comic book movie, but clearly underrated for an honorable mention. Alright then, and my number one favorite comic book movie of all time is... Captain Marvel. No, haha, just kidding, it's Avengers Infinity War. I had a toss-up between Endgame, The Dark Knight, or this one. Which of these three do I consider the best comic book movie? As you can guess, I went with Infinity War. Granted, Endgame will be a classic, but it still has the traditional ending to every superhero film. The Dark Knight is also a good pick. The hero may have not fully won, but the villain didn't fully win either. However, Infinity War changes everything. It reverses the roles as to who we want to see win. The villain is humanized to the point of having a guilt pleasure to see him win. He works hard, he sacrifices so much, thus becoming the hero of the movie when he finally achieves his mad goal. This is a path that no comic book movie has ever gone before, ending it with the heroes losing in a depressing tone. In some ways, I very much like that. At some point, I was getting tired of these all-powerful godlike villains getting beaten so easily. I even said it one time in one of my videos.
Why not let the villain win? Yeah, screw a happy ending. Something like that to fresh out these super powerful villains that come to the earth and somehow they get easily beaten by these mortals?
I don't know how, but the Russo brothers may have heard my cry. Some jokes do not land on me when the stakes are high, but as a standalone movie, this holds on its own for its colorful worlds, its long-awaited crossover, the heroes' interaction with each other, and that beautifully depressing ending that will help it stand out in the years to come to infinity. And that's why Infinity War is my favorite comic book movie. So, what are some of your favorite comic book movies? Leave your thoughts on the comment section to see what are some of your favorites. And if you like this video, leave a like and subscribe for more content. Well guys, tune in next time, because when I get back, I'll be comparing Citizen Kane and The Social Network. So for now, that's it for today. Ciao.
Pasito tum tum, pasito tum tum.